After the previous element tide ended, the world entered the era of great ebb, with countless races such as elves, giants, and orcs disappearing into the long river of history. However, the continuation of life has its own way, and after a long period of accumulation, the blood of ancient and exotic races gradually integrated into humanity. You have the bloodline of giants, become my warrior, and I will make you look down upon the world once again. You have elf blood, join me, and I will let you feel the call of the moon god. You have the ancient dragon bloodline, show your submission to me, and I will make you the pinnacle of the gods. I am the bloodline lord and have the ability to awaken the power of my bloodline. My name is Robin. This is a system, lord, and war article. I hope everyone likes it. Keywords of the novel. War Bloodline Lord without pop-ups. Download the complete TXT collection of War Bloodline Lord, and read the latest chapters of War Bloodline Lord. Chapter 1. Development Leadership. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Development Leadership. Welcome to Pioneer. Robin walked on the boundless wilderness, one person and one horse. This young man looks in his early 20s, with strong and handsome facial features, short black hair, black eyes, straight eyebrows, and a straight nose bridge. He is tall, with wide shoulders, wearing brown leather armor, and a long sword hanging from his waist, giving him a somewhat heroic and spirited appearance. The sky is azure, cloudless for thousands of miles, clear like a mirror. In front of me was an endless wasteland, with sturdy and lush weeds half the height of a person, making it the most common vegetation on the wasteland. A gentle breeze blew past, and the grass ahead immediately stirred up layers of rippling waves. This is the frontier of exploration, known as the Northern Wilderness, by people. In name, it is the territory of the Red Man Empire, but in reality, it is a barren and uncivilized land. Robin is now going to his territory, which he has never been to before. All you need to do is pay enough gold coins to the national treasury. Whether it's nobles, wealthy merchants, or even commoners, everyone can receive a development certificate stamped with the imperial seal. Then, you can go to the wilderness to obtain your own territory. Of course, the imperial government will not provide you with any assistance. You will have to find your own way to provide food, population, and military. What you get is just a wasteland far from the imperial border, where birds do not defecate. Moreover, the barbarian indigenous people living on the wilderness do not recognize the pioneering certificate of the empire. To defend this territory, you need to find a way on your own. The pioneering movement is undoubtedly a gamble, and even losing everything can be considered a good result. The most tragic thing is to throw one's life on this barren land. However, despite this, there are still many people who go to great lengths to obtain the development certificate and then rush to the northern wilderness without hesitation. There is no other reason. Owning one's own land is simply too tempting. Anyway, since the pioneering movement began, the entire northern wilderness gradually became lively. Not long ago, Robin also proudly became a member of the pioneering movement. However, he was lucky. This development certificate was not bought by him with money, but fell from the sky. Robin was originally a commoner, and he had a distant uncle who could not be further away. He saved up some assets by doing business and spent a lot of money to obtain a development certificate. However, this uncle had a poor fortune and died of illness after just 6 months of development. Uncle had no children, and before his death, he suddenly thought of Robin, a distant nephew. Perhaps it was because he didn't want his career to be abandoned halfway, or maybe it was because he pitied his unlucky nephew who had no father or mother. In short, he made a will and gave his territory to Robin. So, for no apparent reason, Robin became a baron. Robin walked through the vast wilderness with one reins and one map, and finally arrived at his territory before dark. On a hilly and high ground, there is a 2-story black wooden building. Such impoverished houses can be seen everywhere within the empire, but on the savage wilderness, this wooden small building is almost the highest level of civilized architecture within a radius of 100 miles. Surrounding the wooden buildings, a pile of houses scattered on the slope of the hill, with about 50 households. These houses are rudimentary and pitiful, with 4 walls built with stones and a layer of hay laid on top, barely able to block wind and rain. Compared to these stone houses, the wooden buildings on the top of the hills are simply castle-level luxury. At the bottom of the hill, a winding river flows like a silver ribbon. The river is about 20 steps wide, and the water is clear to the bottom. Standing by the riverbank, you can see fish happily wandering at the bottom of the river. On both sides of the riverbank, there are abundant water and grass, fertile land, and patches of farmland have been cultivated. Some villagers are bending down to work in the fields. Robin immediately fell in love with this place, and he couldn't even believe that in the barren wasteland, his uncle had found such a feng shui treasure. He rode his horse to the outskirts of the village and saw a wooden sign standing next to a dirt road that pedestrians had stepped on, which read in Imperial language: Raging Wave City. Angry Waves. Robin turned his head to gaze at the quiet and peaceful river in the distance, and then at this poor and dilapidated small village on the hills. Is that all? New Tao City has neither New Tao nor a city. It seems that Uncle has some black humor, but no matter what, this Fury City will become Robin's territory in the future. This small village is obviously not accustomed to outsiders appearing. Robin rode his horse slowly up the hill along the dirt road, which immediately caught the attention of the villagers. The villagers working in the fields raised their heads one after another, and the villagers on their way also stopped, casting curious or wary glances at Robin. Robin soon realized that although the village was poor on the outside, its interior was not simple. He walked over all the way and found that all his followers were Highlanders. The Highlanders have a very prominent feature, which is their exceptionally tall appearance. Legend has it that they have giant bloodline, and male Highlanders are generally taller than 2 meters. Robin is already considered tall among the Empire, but here he can only compare his height to women. These little giants can be considered a fighting nation. They are born with a reverence for strength and violence, thanks to their innate physical advantages. It is not difficult for a Highlander to single out 3 or 4 imperial people. But war is not about fighting in groups. The level of civilization of the Empire is a dimension reduction blow to the Highlanders. 100 years ago, the Empire began its conquest of the western snowy plateau, sweeping away hundreds of Highland tribes. From then on, the Highlanders became a member of the Empire's multi-ethnic family, with some tribes remaining on the snowy plateau while others migrated into the Empire. After a moment of contemplation, Robin roughly guessed how his uncle had fooled a group of Highlanders onto the wilderness. In recent years, the Empire has gradually declined, with financial and land tensions, royal and local tensions, and tensions between the nobility. Everything is tense anyway. So many bankrupt farmers are willing to follow the little nobles to the wilderness to try their luck. After all, they have no money, no rights, and no land, and they have nothing to lose. For the nobles of the Empire, the Highlanders were by no means the ideal excellent lords. Apart from eating and sleeping, they were most skilled in fighting and causing trouble. Many nobles even drove the Highlanders out of their own territory, treating them like plague gods and driving them to the territory of other nobles. Even the military despises the Highlanders. Although they are tall and powerful, they have no sense of discipline and only know how to charge recklessly in battle. Sometimes they even break through their own formation and create a friendly encirclement. In summary, for the Empire, the Highlanders were a group of ignorant barbarians. Although everyone has 2 eyes and a nose, the Empire would not consider the Highlanders as their own kind. It is obvious that Robin's uncle, as a newly established aristocrat, did not have many opportunities to choose his subjects. Being able to recruit such a Highland tribe is already a good achievement. Although the Highlanders had all the above shortcomings, Robin was overjoyed because he knew that the bloodline of these Highlanders was not simple. They were all descendants of ancient iron giants. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Awakeners. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Awakeners. In the ancient times of the gods, besides humans, there were many different races of higher intelligence living on the continent, such as elves, giants, ancient dragons, orcs. At that time, it was the peak of elemental tides, with elemental concentrations hundreds of times higher than today. However, elemental tides fluctuated, and once they reached their peak, elemental concentrations began to gradually decline, ushering in the era of the Great Depression. During the ebb tide era, many races gradually disappeared from history, and low concentrations of elemental tides were unable to support their bodies. So in order to continue their race, the 8 immortals crossed the sea and each showed their divine abilities. Some have abandoned wisdom and civilization, becoming savage and backward, such as the ferocious and bloodthirsty jackals who are direct descendants of orcs. Some give up their originally noble bloodline and slowly integrate into the human world, such as the Highlanders. Why can Robin be certain that Highlanders are descendants of iron giants? Because he has a special ability to see the bloodline of living beings. As an outsider who travels through and occupies the nest of magpies, Robin comes with a bloodline awakening system in his body, which gives him an ability. The Eye of Blood. In Robin's view, whether it was the Highlanders working in the fields or curious onlookers on the roadside, their bodies were surrounded by a misty silver-gray mist, indicating the blood of the iron giant flowing within them. In the world of the Eye of Blood, people with ancient bloodlines are surrounded by this mist, which Robin referred to as blood mist. People with different bloodlines have different colors and concentrations of mist. For example, those with elf bloodlines have mostly green mist on their bodies. The higher the purity of their bloodlines, the thicker the mist on their bodies. Although there has been debate in the academic community about whether Highlanders are descendants of giants, this question has been firmly established by Robin. In the eyes of other nobles, these Highlanders are a group of scourges, but here in Robin, they are simply a nest of treasures. However, it is ironic that the Highlanders were completely unaware of their ancestors. They not only lost the power and glory of the Iron Giant, but also completely forgot where they came from. In ancient times, the Iron Giant was a superior civilization above humanity, but in this era, their descendants were left homeless by human attacks. It's really 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river. Robin couldn't wait to take over his territory. He rode his horse to a Highlander by the roadside and asked with a smile, "I'm Baron Robin. May I ask where housekeeper Horman is?" Robin fantasized that the other party would hear his baronet title, and immediately trembled and bowed. Unfortunately, he was overthinking it, and the villagers were not moved by his baronet title and did not react at all. This is also one thing that nobles do not like Highlanders. These backward barbarians do not understand the greatness of nobles. The Highland villagers remained silent and coldly raised their hand to the wooden building on the top of the hill, indicating a clear meaning. Robin nodded, ignoring the rudeness of the villagers, and walked along the dirt road towards the wooden building. Along the way, he continued to observe his territory. In addition to being pleasantly surprised by the Highland villagers, the poverty level of the village also made him feel embarrassed. Many people were barefoot and didn't even have a pair of shoes. A few minutes later, he passed through the entire Fury City and arrived at the bottom of the wooden building. He tied his horse to the door and rudely pushed it in. After entering, there was a lobby with a long table and several chairs, decorated quite shabby. The room was dimly lit, and there was an unpleasant smell of mold in the air. "Is anyone there?" Robin shouted and heard a rapid sound of footsteps from the second floor, followed by housekeeper Horman walking down the stairs. Horman was an ordinary-looking man in his 50s, with clean brown short hair, grayish temples, and a slender figure. He was wearing coarse cloth clothes and slightly hunched over. He was momentarily taken aback when he saw Robin, and then reacted with a hint of joy on his old face. "You are Baron Robin." "That's right, it's me. Are you the housekeeper Horman?" Robin laughed heartily, and the sound of the Baron was very helpful to him. Finally, there was someone who could understand the goods. Unlike the Highlanders outside, Herman is just an ordinary human old man. In front of Robin's bloodline, there is no mist surrounding Herman's body. In the human world, ordinary people like Herman are still the vast majority. They are ordinary humans who not only lack bloodline power, but also lack talent for fighting spirit and magic. Baron, you're here. The old butler was overjoyed and quickly asked Robin to sit down. The two of them chatted briefly, and then the old butler led Robin to visit his house. Although this wooden building is not large, it has all 5 internal organs and even a small study. Although there are not many books on the bookshelf, Robin's uncle is just pretending. Although Herman is nominally a butler, in reality, he is the only servant in this house. Uncle's bedroom is the best room in this house, and there is even a nice sheepskin blanket on the floor. The room is very clean, and I clean it every day after the old master passed away. The old butler stood at the door, respectfully speaking of his deceased master, with a hint of sadness on his face. Robin wandered around the bedroom, taking a casual look and feeling, and this would be his bedroom from now on. Then, he suddenly turned around and asked Herman, "Where is my uncle buried? Take me to take a look." Robin and his uncle had only met a few times in total, and to him he was almost a stranger, but after all, he inherited the family's territory. He should pay homage to both emotions and reason. Uncle's grave is behind the wooden building, on a flat grassland. The tomb is very rudimentary, without even a decent tombstone, just a small mound surrounded by a circle of pebbles at the edge. Robin stood in front of the tomb, pretending to observe a moment of silence, which moved the old butler behind him deeply. What a filial nephew he was. After the funeral was over, Robin and the old butler walked back together and said, "I think all the residents in our village are Highlanders." Yeah, when the master said they could share the land, these Highland people followed suit. Are there Awakeners among these Highlanders? Although Robin knew the possibility was slim, he still had some expectations. Herman was taken aback when asked, and then laughed, "Baron, please don't joke. How could there be Awakeners in such a remote and impoverished place like us? The awakened are those who awaken the power of their bloodline. Those humans with ancient bloodlines, although their bloodlines are now very thin, occasionally there are lucky ones who can awaken the power of their ancestors' bloodlines. These people are Awakeners. The power of awakened individuals is mostly very powerful, and their ability to awaken varies depending on their ancestral bloodline. For example, Highlanders, if they awaken the Iron Giant bloodline, they usually strengthen their body's abilities, making it harder, stronger, and longer. People with elf bloodline may awaken abilities related to natural magic. The most common awakener among purebred humans is the Fighting Knight. That's right, fighting spirit is actually a bloodline power that originated from ancient humans and is also the most common bloodline power on the continent. In the Empire, the Fighting Knights are the backbone of the nobility and war machines. Those who can awaken their fighting spirit are generally the nobility, and there are occasional people among the common people who awaken their fighting spirit. Once they awaken their fighting spirit, even if they have half-stepped into the noble class, some small nobles gradually fall out of the noble ranks because they cannot awaken their fighting spirit. There are too many people who have awakened their fighting spirit ability, to the extent that many people believe that they can awaken their fighting spirit solely through cultivation. But in fact, this is a misconception, just like the old butler Herman, who has no bloodline power in his body, even if he is tempered to death, it is impossible to awaken his fighting spirit. The second most well-known awakener among humans is a wizard, also known as a wizard. Many people think that wizards are humans, but in fact, this is also wrong. In ancient times, wizards were wizards and humans were humans, but the blood relationship between the two was very close. Wizards have a lifespan comparable to elves and powerful magical abilities, but with the ebb and flow of elements, they gradually assimilate into humans and become wizards among them. By now, people no longer refer to fighting knights and wizards as awakeners. Except for those professional old scholars, the Awakeners in the general population refer to the Awakeners among sub-races such as elven and giant descendants. In this world, the Awakened are a very powerful presence, and some great nobles may even form a Awakened warrior legion, composed of the Awakened. The system inside Robin's body is called the Bloodline Awakening System. As the name suggests, it has the ability to awaken bloodlines, so when Robin sees the entire village being Highland people, he becomes ecstatic. He can use the system to transform Highlanders into Iron Giant Awakeners and form his own Awakener Legion. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Blood of Titans. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Blood of Titans. Robin and the old butler returned to the wooden building. Just as Robin was fantasizing about leading his army of Awakeners to fight in all directions and dominate the wilderness, the old butler suddenly stuttered and said, "Baron, there is something I must tell you." What's up?" "This." The old butler's face turned pale, and it seemed a bit difficult to talk about this matter. "It's like this, the master has been dead for over a year. During this time, the lords here spontaneously elected a new leader named Simon. In fact, he is now the steward here." Upon hearing this, "Robin, what is the situation?" "I just came here and was ignored. I can't bear it." Only Uncle Robin was a nobleman in the city of Nuteo. After his death, the entire territory immediately entered a state of being unowned by dragons. Simon was the strongest member of the Highland tribe, and the Highlanders revered strength and violence, so Simon naturally became the new leader. Housekeeper Horman is already old and just an ordinary person. He cannot control the fierce Highlanders and is gradually marginalized. Now, everything in the territory is up to Simon. In the lobby of the wooden building, Robin and the old butler sat at a long table. "This Simon is amazing. He is also tall among the Highlanders. His arms are so thick, his waist is bigger than a bucket, and when he stands up, his head can reach the roof of the shed. With a 300 to 400 pound stone, he can hold it without even breathing." Holman's words were full of emotion, and he gestured with both hands, indicating that he was very wary and even afraid of this Simon. In their tribe, they all call him Iron Bear Warrior. When the master was still alive, he was already somewhat powerless to command. Iron Bear Warrior, this name Robin has also heard of. There will only be one Iron Bear Warrior in a Highlander tribe, who is the strongest of this tribe. It seems that if Robin wants to truly take over the territory, he must first take care of Simon. After introducing Robin to the old butler, he kindly reminded him, "Baron, please do not provoke Simon on your own. The Highlanders are ignorant and barbaric, and do not understand the distinction between superiority and inferiority." Horman's words were quite subtle, but Robin also understood. His meaning was, "You can't beat him, don't be reckless." Robin had his own plan. He nodded and responded perfunctorily. At this moment, the sun had already set and the sky was slowly getting dark. Robin originally wanted to show his face in front of his own people, but it seems that he can only wait until tomorrow. Housekeeper Homan stood up and lit a candlelight. The dim lobby was immediately lit by orange candles, but a single lamp was like a beam, only able to illuminate a small area. Robin's territory is really poor. The old butler is reluctant to use such a single candle. Today, it was Robin who came and took out the candle. "Please wait a moment, Baron. I'll go cook now." The old butler ran into the kitchen and tossed around for a while, bringing 2 pieces of black bread and 2 plates of boiled beans. The old butler felt a bit guilty. "I'm really sorry, Baron. That's all I have to eat. Don't mind." Black bread is dry and astringent, difficult to swallow, boiled beans without salt, bland and tasteless, like a paste. In the Empire, this is the food of the poorest people in society. Robin comforted the old butler with a few words, but couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He thought that becoming a baron would lead a good life, but it seemed that he had to start from scratch. After dinner, Robin returned to his lord's bedroom. He pushed open the window and a cool evening breeze immediately hit his face. The wooden tower is the surrounding high ground, and standing in the bedroom on the second floor, one can overlook the entire territory. In the Highland tribe below the hills, only a few scattered stone houses were lit with flames. Looking further away, the entire wilderness was pitch black and quiet, somewhat frightening. Within a radius of 100 miles, Nuteo City is the only civilized existence. Robin moved a wooden chair and sat by the bed, then opened the Bloodline awakening system in his mind. A semi-transparent golden screen immediately popped up in front of him, and the system's main page currently only had two options, one for individual, and the other for team. Robin currently does not have a team, so the team option is still gray. He clicked on the personal option with his mind to enter his personal interface. This interface displays Robin's various data. His current level is 59, which is already quite powerful in the human world. With just brute force, Robin can defeat some low-level fighting knights to the ground. With the support of the system, as long as you fight, you can gain experience. Whether you win or lose, you gain more experience. After understanding this, Robin began his combat career. He first fought with thugs on the streets, then joined the gladiatorial arena and fought against warriors and beasts. Later, he also joined the army of local lords and fought on the battlefield for a period of time. As long as he can't be killed, it will eventually make him stronger. Apart from his abnormal basic attributes, Robin is also an Awakener. And his bloodline power is even more abnormal. He has the bloodline of the ancient divine race Titan. In fact, the first person he activated his bloodline power with the system was himself. In the ancient times of the gods, Titans were the gods of all gods. Legend has it that they controlled the power of the sky and thunder, living in floating cities above clouds. However, nowadays there are very few records of Titans, and historians can only glimpse a little bit of this powerful race from legendary stories. The Titan bloodline brought extraordinary supernatural power to Robin, but he never used the power of the sky and thunder that Titan possessed. After awakening his bloodline power, a small cluster of white lightning appeared in Robin's sea of consciousness, just like his second heart, with the same heart rate as his, flickering with light and shadow. However, he can only nourish this lightning, but he doesn't know how to use it at all. At present, Robin's bloodline level is only level 1, and he can only continue to fight and gain more experience. He hopes that after his bloodline level is raised to level 2, he can gain more Titan power. In a large stone house in the village, several Highlanders sat around the fire pit, the flames burning with crackling sounds, and the jumping flames reflected on the gloomy faces of each Highlander. The leader of the Highland people is in his 20s, exceptionally tall, half a head taller than other Highland people, sitting there like a meat mountain. He has rough and crazy facial features, big eyes, a big nose, a big mouth, and a sharp gray body. He exposes his iron gray upper body, and his muscles are as hard as stones. He is Simon. The nephew of the old Baron. The new Baron has finally arrived. Simon spoke slowly with anger on his face. The other Highlanders were all focused on watching him, waiting for his leader to give instructions. Back then, the old Baron would die if he wanted to, leaving us nothing. At that time, we couldn't even eat enough, and the half-aged child was starving at night. Simon's face showed sadness, and the other Highlanders also showed a sad expression. They had been going through such a difficult time. After more than a year, the big guy worked day and night. Although he still can't eat enough now, he won't starve to death anymore. This village was built by us alone. At this point, everyone swept away the haze on their faces and showed a proud expression. Now, that newly arrived furry guy wants to eat ready-made food when he comes. Why? Did he contribute a bit when we were starving and suffering from cold? This house and that field belong to us, and he wants to take them all when he comes. We don't agree. Simon's words were also in the hearts of all the Highlanders. They built this village, but Robin didn't do anything. Why should he become the leader as soon as he arrived? Just a piece of paper from the imperial government. In the eyes of Highlanders, that thing is like wiping paper. The crowd in the stone house was suddenly excited, and everyone shouted loudly, "No, we won't agree." The loud voice of the Highlanders shook the thatched roof. "Boss, just tell us how to do it, we all listen to you." Simon saw that everyone's emotions had been almost stirred up, with a sinister smile on his face. It was hard to imagine that his simple and rustic face, like that of an old farmer, could also smile so sinister. "Big guy, you all listen to me. I insist on squeezing this little white face away. I've seen it all here, please click on a bookmark." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Unwelcomed People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Unwelcomed People. The next day, after having an unpleasant breakfast, Robin felt that he needed to introduce the villagers to the new lord, so he asked the old butler to gather the villagers and make a brilliant appearance. After a period of time, all the men, women, and children in the village gathered in the open space in front of the wooden gate of the lord's mansion. In the early spring morning, the sun had not yet fully risen, and the air was fresh and a bit cold. The grass was damp and full of dew. There are a total of 50 households in Nuteo City, with a population of over 200, all of whom are young people and not an elderly person. The villagers stood in unison on the open ground, with an average height of 2 meters. Not only were the men tall and powerful, but even the women were also strong and powerful. In the aesthetic view of Highland people, the stronger the woman, the more beautiful she is. She has a big butt and is easy to raise, thick legs and arms, and can work. She can also help with a fight. As for the noble ladies in the empire with long legs, slender waist, and delicate features, even the Highlanders wouldn't even glance at them. They were too ugly and weak, and even after being punched, they couldn't stop crying. Standing in front of this group of Highlanders, Robin and the old butler were like two dwarf winter melons. Robin had to look up to see their faces. Cough cough. Robin pretended to clear his throat, and the old butler next to him immediately understood and took out the imperial government's appointment document from his arms. The tradition of father-to-son succession and brother-to-brother succession in noble territories is recognized by law, and the appointment of the imperial government is actually a formality. But with the decline of the imperial royal family, many nobles were too lazy to open such a formal document. However, Robin was a newly rising aristocrat with no power or influence, so he obediently followed the procedure. The appointment document is preceded by a long string of meaningless administrative rhetoric, with the most important being the last sentence. From now on, Baron Robin will inherit the ownership of Nuteo City. The old butler finished reading the document loudly, and Robin was still hoping for a round of welcome applause, but he thought too much and was not welcomed. The Highland villagers all stared at Robin with a cold and indifferent expression, as if they hadn't heard anything just now. Their gaze at Robin was more like that of a clown. The old butler's face looked a bit ugly, but Robin continued shamelessly. "Starting from today, I will be your new lord. I believe that under my leadership, we can make the construction of Nuteo City even better, so that everyone can have enough to eat and wear warm clothes." Everyone still didn't react, but they turned a blind eye to those who should have cooperated in the performance. Robin awkwardly coughed twice more and could only forcefully shift the topic to save respect. "Well, I want to recruit 2 maids from the villagers. The old butler is getting old and it's inconvenient to work. The salary is very generous, with 50 copper coins per person per month." Robin discussed this matter with Holman this morning, and the old butler initially stopped him. However, after seeing the old butler almost break his waist when he moved a chair, Robin decided to call for 2 maids instead. In fact, according to the market price within the empire, 50 copper is already an extremely low price, even the most unscrupulous lords cannot offer such a low price. However, this is a wilderness. Moreover, the payer is still Robin. The reason why nobles are nobles is because they possess a large amount of resources, some have food and some have money. Robin is currently out of food and no one around. Fortunately he saved up some savings in earlier years. When it comes to giving money, the silent crowd finally seems to have come to life. Although it is difficult to use money on the wilderness, money has a natural attraction to humans at all times. Even if it doesn't have to be kept at home to look at it, it feels comfortable. Some young women in the village began to get restless, and Robin clearly saw some people eager to try, whispering as if they wanted to sign up. But Robin waited for a while, but none of them came forward to sign up. The villagers all looked at Simon standing at the front without saying a word, and no one dared to step forward. The young Highland leader held his chest in both hands and looked at Robin coldly with a mocking expression. When the villagers gathered just now, the old butler had secretly told Robin that this person was Simon. In fact, even if the butler didn't mention it, Robin probably guessed that even among the Highlanders, Simon stood out among the crowd. He was at least half a head taller than his peers around him, which was too conspicuous. Robin immediately understood in his heart that these guys had already been angry and wanted to give himself a push. He sneered inwardly, still calm on the surface, and the atmosphere couldn't be awkward all the time. He had to find a step on his own. Everyone, go back and consider it. If you're interested, just sign up with housekeeper Horman. The villagers were disbanded, and Robin and the old butler returned to the wooden building. As soon as the door closed, the old butler kindly reminded him, "Sir, it must be Simon who caused the trouble. He doesn't speak up, and no one dares to come and work here." "I know, I'll take care of this," Robin said calmly, with no signs of joy or sorrow on his face. The old butler was afraid that his young lord would overreact and start a fight with Simon. He quickly reminded him, "Master, don't go and fight Simon hard. He has rough skin and thick flesh, and it won't be cost-effective if we win." Robin could hear the old butler's voiceover and smiled silently. Simon is a swift and decisive person. Just giving him a blow in the morning was not enough, but soon his second move to squeeze Robin came. In the evening, the old butler suddenly approached Robin with a bitter expression on his face and said, "Sir, I have something to report to you." Robin was sitting in the bedroom, flipping through a yellowed notebook at his desk. This was his uncle's pioneering diary, and he was wondering if he had written any valuable information. As soon as he heard the old butler's words, he knew it was definitely not good. He closed his diary and said, "What's wrong?" "Master, we are out of food." Originally, the old butler was getting older, and after Uncle Robin's death, he lost his source of livelihood and relied on the villagers to make a living. Although the Highlanders are barbaric and backward, their hearts are not bad, and the old butler gets along well with them on weekdays. The old butler is literate and the only cultural figure in the village. He usually helps the villagers write a character or something. As a reward, the villagers will send food to the old butler every 3 days. Today is the day for delivering food, but no one has arrived yet. After listening to the butler explain the cause and effect, Robin immediately understood that this was Simon's move again, and it was a killing move. Without food, Robin could only obediently bow down to Simon. Within the empire, there have been incidents of lower-class people struggling to survive and resisting the nobility, driving them out of their territories, and even killing their entire families. No matter how intrigued the nobles may be, they have always been consistent in safeguarding the overall interests of the aristocratic class. A mob like Simon would definitely be violently suppressed by a coalition of nobles, and would be publicly executed as a warning to others. However, this is a wilderness, and recently other noble pioneers have been hundreds of miles away. And Robin is a new aristocrat, nobody knows him, and no other aristocrat will help him. Robin was so angry that he laughed instead. He had just arrived and wanted to familiarize himself with the environment. He didn't want to tear his face from the local snake so quickly, but he didn't expect this barbarian to become even more troublesome. "I really didn't hit you, but you rushed to find a way to beat me up." After a moment of reflection, he said to the old butler, "Go and gather Simon and the whole village on the empty ground downstairs." "Master, what are you doing?" the old butler said anxiously when he saw Robin's angry expression on his face. "Don't be impulsive, that Simon is a ruthless person." Robin sneered inwardly, "Ruthless? I'm still a werewolf." Being looked down upon by the butler, Robin felt somewhat uncomfortable. He stood up and smiled, saying, "Don't worry, I have a way to subdue these barbarians." The old butler was still beating his drums in his heart, but seeing the confident demeanor of his own baron, he had no choice but to execute the order. At this moment, Simon and a few villagers were having dinner at their own house. There was a big pot standing on top of the fire pit, steaming hot. A few Highlanders skillfully opened the fish they caught in the river today, tore open their stomachs, removed their internal organs, and threw them into the pot. They also added a handful of wild vegetables picked by the river. In the wealthy city of Fury, this is definitely a feast. If Robin were to see this scene, his nose would probably be crooked. Ragewave City is Robin's territory, and theoretically everything on this land is his property, including this group of Highlanders. But now the Lord is hungry, while they are happily eating fish. "Hee, I ran out of food for that little white face today, let's see what he'll do in the future." Simon cracked his big mouth and showed a sly smile, with a row of big yellow teeth neatly arranged. Several Highlanders immediately cheered the leader, and one of them mocked and said, "In the future, if the Baron wants to eat, he will have to go down to work on his own." "Even if he pities the old butler, he can only go hungry with him," Simon said, serving himself a large bowl of fish soup and taking a big sip. "Oh! It's so fresh." A few people were eating one bowl at a time, enjoying themselves. Suddenly, a Highland villager walked into the stone house and reported to Simon, "Leader, the Baron has called us over." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Confidence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Confidence. Simon frowned impatiently as he chattered on the fish bones. "What's going on?" "It's just eating." "I didn't say anything, but the old butler said that the Baron named me to see you," the messenger replied. Simon chuckled contemptuously and said, "It's just that you can't eat anymore. Take it out on me." He tilted his neck and drank the fish soup from the bowl, then stood up and said, "Let's go, brothers, go see what little white face has." After a moment, the villagers gathered again on the open space in front of the wooden building, which was the second time they had gathered today. Simon stood at the forefront of the crowd, holding his chest in both hands, looking like he was pulling the most from above and below. The group of Highlanders behind him also proudly tilted their heads up. At this moment, the sun was setting in the west, and the afterglow of the setting sun hit the robust bodies of these Highland barbarians, giving them a beauty that seemed like classical sculptures. Robin walked out of the wooden house with a face as heavy as water, and there was no sign of sadness or joy on his face. He walked up to Simon and looked back at him. Robin's figure was already tall and straight in the Empire, and years of fighting had given him a muscular physique. However, standing in front of the stronger Simon, he looked like a slender little girl. The Iron Bear warrior looked at Robin with a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. If he only looked at his physique, Simon could strangle Robin with one hand. "I don't like to talk nonsense, so I'll just speak up," Robin said loudly. "I know many of you don't like me and think that I came here to take away your land and labor. I can understand that in the more than a year since my uncle passed away, it was you who built this wasteland into a home." Simon frowned as he listened, thinking to himself whether this little white-faced baron had a conscience or taken the wrong medicine and was actually speaking for us. Then, Robin's conversation changed. "But, Robin, I am the legitimate heir of my uncle. I have an appointment letter issued by the imperial government, and I am the statutory baron of New Tau City. I did not steal or rob. This land, including you, is the property that I reasonably and legally inherit." Robin paced back and forth in front of everyone, walking slowly and speaking slowly, confusing Simon, the old butler, and the villagers. Why did he even help each other speak? What does the Baron mean? I know you all don't agree with me, but I also inherited this land reasonably and legally. So what should I do? Robin clapped his hands and put on a sudden realization. Otherwise, I know your Highlanders love fighting the most. Send a representative and let's have a fight. If you can win against me, I will immediately pack up and leave, and the Fury City will be given to you. But if I win, from now on, you will have to listen to me and fight for me. The Highlanders are a race that worships the strong, and there is no other way to make them submit than to defeat them. After Robin finished speaking, the villagers were taken aback for a moment, and then burst into laughter, with an undisguised mockery in their laughter. In their eyes, this little white-faced baron must have been crazy about making such a ridiculous bet. The old butler was dumbfounded upon hearing this, only feeling his head twitching in confusion. He thought to himself that the baron was still too young and spirited, completely ignoring his advice and making such a foolish decision. All right now, the territory can't be held anymore. Master, please don't blame me. I did my best, but your nephew is really not up to par. Highlanders are born warriors, and the extreme environment of the snowy plateau endows them with powerful strength and resilient souls. Even a half-sized Highlander can easily defeat 2 adult Imperial men, and even female Highlanders can easily defeat an Imperial soldier. 1.1. Although the Highlanders were the conquered side, they never convinced the Imperials. They believed that the Imperials relied on despicable trickery to win the war, and they lost due to their small number and lack of unity. The excuse of the Highlanders is not without reason. After all, few emperors can defeat the Highlanders alone. The Iron Giant bloodline of the Highlanders has innate advantages, and the physical differences caused by different races make the combat power of both sides like heaven and earth. Baron, are you serious about that? Simon had a sarcastic sneer on his face, looking down at Robin as if he was looking at a fool. He thought this little white face was just a weak chicken, but he didn't expect it to be an arrogant fool. Robin spat on the grass and said, "Men speak their word, every spit is a nail." "Okay." Simon shouted. "That's settled, I'll fight you." The villagers retreated one after another, giving enough space for the two to fight. Simon's body was bare, and his skin was slightly iron-gray. Under the sunset, it reflected a silver luster like metal. The first time Robin saw Simon, he realized that he was completely different from other Highlanders. His Iron Giant bloodline was purer and stronger, which gave him even greater strength. In front of his bloodline, Simon's blood mist almost covered his entire body, and the purity of his bloodline surprised Robin. Although Simon caused trouble for Robin, Robin became more and more interested in him. With such a pure Iron Giant bloodline, if he could become my subordinate in the future, he would definitely be a fierce general. Simon didn't know that Robin had already arranged everything for him in his mind, and now he was only focused on teaching this little white-faced person to be a good person. He shook his head, moved his shoulders, and clenched his 2 iron fists with a clattering sound. His big copper bell-like eyes stared at Robin, and a disdainful smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. He is a renowned Iron Bear warrior, the strongest in the tribe, with the capital of pride and contempt. Since he was born, he has never lost. Those Empire warriors who are as strong as cows can't withstand their 3 or 2 punches, this little white face. Haha. Robin appeared very relaxed as he took off his leather armor and stood calmly in front of the Iron Bear warrior. Before the battle began, the old butler wanted to make a final struggle, hoping to save the Baron's seemingly insignificant life. He ran to Robin's side and whispered anxiously, "Master, you're not his opponent. Let's find a different way. You can't win." The old butler is really anxious, so anxious that he can't even afford to show mercy to Robin. Robin smiled back at him and said, "It's okay, just watch from the side." The old butler let out a deep sigh. As the saying goes, good words are hard to persuade damn ghosts, so he had to step aside and pray to the Baron not to be beaten too badly. Before the formal start of the duel, Robin suddenly smiled and said, "It doesn't mean much to just fight so dry. Otherwise, I'm at least a Baron. I'm planning to bully you with you. As long as you can make me fall, even if you win." He didn't just do this to pretend to be forced, because Highlanders only worship the strong, and the stronger you are, the more he admires you. Robin wants Simon and all the villagers to know that my strength cannot be caught up with even by flattery, so that this group of Highland barbarians can truly be convinced. And Robin has this confidence. Although Simon is strong, he has not truly awakened the bloodline of the Iron Giant, while Robin is a genuine Titan Awakener. The gap between the two of them is even greater than that between heaven and earth. Robin's behavior was seen by Simon as a blatant provocation, and the proud Iron Bear warrior couldn't bear such insults the most. "You will pay the price for your arrogance," Simon said angrily. Robin waved at him and said, "Come on." The next second, Simon exerted force on his lower limbs and rushed towards Robin. Unlike ordinary fools, Simon found a perfect balance between strength and skill. His footsteps were light and swift, and he was as fast as a gust of wind, blowing in front of Robin in an instant. Iron Bear Warrior is truly worthy of its reputation. I've seen it all here. Can you give me a recommended ticket? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Crushing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Crushing. Simon raised his hand and punched Robin in the head. Although he despised Little White Face in his heart, Simon did not underestimate the enemy in the slightest. Years of fighting on the snowy plains have taught him that even lions and rabbits fight with all their might, while Iron Bear warriors always give their all. Simon's iron fist quickly enlarged in Robin's field of vision, with veins bulging on his fist like a large iron hammer. Before his fist arrived, a strong wind had already struck his face. Robin had no doubt about the terrifying power contained in this punch. Even a bull would be knocked down by Simon's punch. He immediately tilted his head and dodged, Simon's fist almost rubbing against his cheek, and he dodged it. Simeon Tun was taken aback for a moment. He didn't expect the little white-faced Baron to be able to dodge his punch, and he knew in his heart that he had not let water go at all. Looking at Robin's movements again, his entire body hardly moved, except for a slight tilt of his head to the side, which managed to dodge Simon's punch. In the face of enemy attacks, most people instinctively make significant moves due to fear in their hearts. Only true experts know how to minimize the range of avoidance and dodge enemy attacks with minimal movements. This not only requires superb combat skills, but also requires fearlessness in the face of enemies and a strong warrior's heart. There is only one possibility that Robin can make such a beautiful evasion move, and he is a true combat master. While Simon was surprised, he couldn't help but look at Robin with admiration. This little white face really has two brushes. But Iron Bear Warrior won't give up on this. It's not enough to make him submit just by hiding. Simon followed with a combination of fists, which greeted Robin like a storm. His punches were as fast as lightning, and he even produced a series of aftershocks. When others looked at him, it was as if he had suddenly punched 7 or 8 more fists, all at once, towards Robin. Robin's evasion was even more astonishing, and Simon's punches were impenetrable, yet he couldn't even touch his body. Robin's body is as agile as a loach, always able to dodge Simon's attack with incredible posture. Simon became increasingly frightened as he fought, and his expression had changed from disdain at the beginning to an unprecedented solemnity now. This little white face was a formidable enemy he had never encountered before. The villagers and the old butler who were watching the battle around were already stunned. It was a thrilling and suffocating battle, and everyone widened their eyes, afraid of missing the decisive last second. Robin's performance surprised everyone, as no one has ever been able to stand in a stalemate with a powerful Iron Bear warrior for so long. The old butler rubbed his old eyes hard in disbelief, and the shock in his heart was as great as this wilderness. My God, Lord Baron is so capable of fighting. Fighting is not only a collision of physique and skills, but also a mental confrontation. Although Highlanders have never been good at using their brains are quite lively when fighting. Simon immediately changed his battle strategy when he saw that his fists and kicks had no effect on Robin. He punched weakly and then lunged into Robin's arms, his two big hands resembling iron pliers, tightly embracing Robin's body. He attempted to overwhelm Robin with his own body, dragging the battle into the purest form of power confrontation. In previous battles, Simon had also encountered warriors who were particularly skilled, and at this time, the tall and unusual physique of the Highlanders demonstrated a huge advantage. As long as the two people's bodies were tightly pressed together, even the most exquisite combat art would be difficult to play a role. And once the battle enters the stage of strength, victory already belongs to Simon. The Iron Bear warrior is very confident in his muscles, even a half-ton wild yak on the plateau can easily be knocked down. The battle strategy cannot be said to have any problems. After all, Simon has been stronger than Robin more than once, and ordinary people can see the huge difference in strength between the two at a glance. But this time, his 100 attempts at combat experience were not feasible. At the moment of colliding with Robin, Simon felt that he was not holding a human in his arms, but a towering tree. At that moment, his explosive strength was enough to knock down a lion, and the grass under his feet was trampled upside down by him. But Robin's feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, not to mention being knocked down, he remained motionless. Simon was greatly surprised that his proudest power was not working. His first reaction was disbelief. Can this little white face use any magic? In fact, at the moment Simon took action, Robin had already seen through his thoughts and wanted to overwhelm me with strength. Well, this tactic is not a problem, but unfortunately you really kicked the iron plate with more strength. Titan is not only the god of the sky and thunder, but also the main god of all giants. Legend has it that Titan's power is enough to pull mountains and fill the sea. As a descendant of the Titan bloodline, although Robin may not be as exaggerated as pulling mountains and filling seas, his strange power is enough to wrestle with the several-ton long-haired elephant on the snowy plain. Robin sneered in his heart, since you want to compare strength, then I'll compare myself to you. As his body sank, he grabbed Simon's arm with both hands, twisted his waist and turned around suddenly, throwing the tall man over 2 meters away. Simon has extensive combat experience, and he was not unaware of Robin's intentions. However, when he tried to stop him, he was horrified to find that the opponent's power was more than 10 times stronger than his. He felt as if he had been thrown out by a snowy mammoth, with no possibility of resistance at all. A beautiful over-shoulder fall, with a loud bang, Simon fell heavily onto the grass. Although the grass provided some cushioning, Robin's heavy fall was too heavy, and the grass was actually sunk in by Simon's body. The whole scene fell silent for an instant, and everyone was stunned by this scene. Everything happened too suddenly, and before people could react, Simon had already fallen to the grass. Invincible Iron Bear warrior, Simon has fallen. In the hearts of the Highland villagers, it seems that a big mountain has collapsed with a loud bang. The old butler exclaimed in surprise and even made a big leap in excitement. Robin stood up straight, with a victorious smile on his face, his breathing steady, and his face as usual, as if the recent battle was not even a warm up for him. And Simon lay on the ground, feeling as if his spine had broken. In fact, the physical trauma was not serious enough, and the spiritual impact truly made it difficult for Simon to accept. For the first time in his life, not only was his combat skills inferior to the opponent, but even his proudest strength was crushed by them. Are you still here? Robin asked provocatively, wanting to break the pride of these Highlanders at once, so that they would never have the idea of challenging themselves again. The glory of the Iron Bear warrior supported Simon to climb up, leaving a humanoid mark on the grass. He was like a struggling beast, staring at Robin with crimson eyes. Come again. Although he already knew the gap between himself and the other person in his heart, the warrior's bloodline made it impossible for him to just give up. Robin suddenly noticed that the blood mist on Simon's body had become even thicker. Okay, come again. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Surrender to the Strong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Surrender to the Strong. The following battle was entirely a one-sided massacre, until the sun in the west completely set and Simon was repeatedly knocked down by the Baron. His entire face was beaten to a pig's head and his whole body was bruised. Because he had already regarded these Highlanders as his own subjects, Robin always considered the appropriate timing when he took action. Faced with Simon's persistent beating, he gradually became impatient while admiring him. Finally, Robin, frustrated and unable to control his strength, punched Simon and broke his nose bridge. The big guy's nose sprayed blood on one side and collapsed on the grass on the other. This time, he finally couldn't get up again. At the end of the duel, Simon no longer wanted to win over Robin. He only wanted to hold on for a while longer in Robin's hands, and this battle went from a struggle for territory to Simon's own training. The more he fought, the more Simon admired Robin, and he found himself in despair that there was no possibility of winning at all. The Highlanders worshipped the strong, and Robin's strength makes Simon want to submit from the bottom of his heart. He collapsed on the grass in all directions and, with his last strength, said angrily, "Give up." Even Robin felt a bit tired after playing for so long. Fortunately he still achieved his ultimate goal. He wiped the thin sweat off his head and turned to look at the other Highland villagers who were watching. His gaze was electric, and no one dared to look at him. Since the strongest Simon has already given up, the others only have one choice left. The Highland villagers looked at each other and knelt down on one knee. The clumsy Highlanders may not say anything beautiful, but their actions are enough to explain everything. Robin smiled contentedly at the corner of his mouth and said to the villagers, "Take Simon away and go back to recuperate well." "Yes, Lord." Robin turned around and was about to return to the wooden building when he suddenly felt empty inside. He suddenly stopped and said, "Oh, by the way, I haven't had dinner yet. What's so delicious? Hurry up and bring me some." The Highland villagers carried Simon away, and a few minutes later, several Highland girls carried a large pot of stewed fish and brought it to Robin. Robin and the old butler had a satisfying meal of fish soup, which excited the old butler to the point of praising Robin as the greatest warrior, and like a god of war descending to earth, at the dinner table. They also felt ashamed because they had underestimated Robin before, but Robin didn't take it seriously. After this duel, Robin's supreme position in the City of Fury was completely established, and from then on his words became an absolute law. After resolving the issue of leadership, Robin spent a day inspecting his territory. In theory, the 100-mile radius around the City of Fury belongs to Robin's territory, but in reality, the wilderness only recognizes fists, and what can be defended is your land. He also inspected the farmland cultivated by the Highlanders. The Highlanders were originally part of a hunting tribe and began to learn how to farm after being taken in by the Empire. However, the farming techniques were completely impossible to understand. The summary of this land cultivation can be summarized in 4 words. Arbitrary. If it weren't for the hunting team always being able to catch wild animals in the wild, and the abundant aquatic products in the Nuteo River, the villagers would have starved themselves to death just by farming. Robin despairingly realized that relying on the Highlanders for economic development was completely futile. He wondered if he could bring in another group of slaves or bankrupt farmers from the Empire. He didn't want to live his life solely on fish soup. Simon was beaten badly in this duel, but the Iron Giant's bloodline is really strong. Even an ordinary person would have to lie down for a month after being beaten like that, but this barbarian lay down for 3 days and then bounced around again. In New Tau City, there are a total of 51 adult Highland males. They are not only the main labor force in the village, but also the guards. After defeating Simon, the system showed that all 51 of them had joined Robin's team, and Robin named them the Iron Giant Guard. In the era of the gods, the Iron Giants were once the guardians of the Titan gods. Unexpectedly, 1,000 years later, the descendants of the Iron Giants became the guards of the Titan descendants, and sometimes fate was so wonderful. In addition, on the main page of the Blood Awakening system, in addition to the two options of individual and team, a new option has been added. Hero, and Simon has been separately assigned to the Hero column by the system. With Simon's strength and bloodline strength, he does have this qualification. At present, Simon and the other 50 Highland warriors have a bloodline level of 0, and Robin is not in a hurry to awaken their Iron Giant bloodline. If their own combat power suddenly inexplicably increases significantly, these Highlanders will surely have doubts, and Robin must come up with a lie to pass. The existence of the system is simply incomprehensible to people in this world, and Robin has no intention of telling anyone his own big secret. So, when Simon was almost healed, Robin alone called him to his small study. Simon is the head of these Highlanders, and as long as he believes Robin's lies, other Highlanders will naturally follow suit. Simon strode into the study, where the Empire's house was somewhat small for the Highlander, with his head almost reaching the ceiling. The study was already not big, and as soon as this big guy came in, he immediately occupied a quarter of the space. "Boss, you call me," Simon said in a hoarse voice, as the Highlander's loud voice shook the entire room slightly. Robin sat behind the desk, with the old man's demeanor full of determination. "How have you recovered from your injuries?" Simon cracked his mouth and showed a simple smile, resembling an old farmer in the field. "It's okay, I'm rough-skinned and thick-skinned. You can just beat me, leader." Robin nodded, knowing how to get beaten up. It seemed like it was not a big deal. "There's something very important to tell you when I called you over." Robin pretended to be mysterious, and Simon's expression became serious upon hearing it. "Do you know who the ancestors of your Highlanders were?" The Highland man looked bewildered when asked and shook his head like a fool. "Ancestors? That thing can't be eaten, whatever the person is doing." "I tell you, the ancestors of your Highlanders were Iron Giants," Robin said. "Oh, I haven't heard of it before." Simon's face was indifferent, thinking to himself, what is the leader saying? What is an Iron Giant? It sounds very hard. If it weren't for being unable to defeat Robin, he wouldn't have had the patience to listen to these nonsense. Seeing Simon's expression of meddling in my own affairs, Robin only felt that these muscular Highlanders, who were 2 heads in size, were talking to them about history and heritage. In their eyes, everything was just nonsense. "Awakened, you've heard of this before, haven't you?" As soon as he mentioned something related to the battle, Simon finally became interested and nodded fiercely. "I know. I once met an Awakener before, who was a tiger man and indeed quite strong. However, he still didn't hit me. I broke one of his legs and threw him into the glacier." Simon was proud of himself, and the powerful reputation of the Awakener was evident. Defeating an Awakener was also a great honor for the Iron Bear warrior. In the Empire, the Tiger people are relatively common Awakeners, and their bloodline comes from ancient orcs. Tiger people are usually tall and powerful, and on the battlefield, they are as brave and invincible as road rollers. Many nobles will form their own Tiger Man Guard, and the royal family even has a Tiger Man Legion of thousands of people. I've seen it all here. Please click on a bookmark. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Iron Giant Guard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Iron Giant Guard. Simon highly admires the Tiger Man, but Robin sneered. The Tiger Man is indeed fierce, but compared to the bloodline of the Iron Giant, the Tiger Man's bloodline is completely lacking. He went straight to the topic. "Simon, the veins of the Iron Giant flow in the veins of your Highlanders. I have a way to make you an Awakener, are you willing?" Robin's words can be considered as hitting Simon's nail on the head, and Highlanders will be eager to try anything related to strength. Simon knows the power of the Awakened, and he dreams of becoming the Awakened. "Leader, I want it too much." Simon excitedly walked forward and slammed his two big hands on Robin's desk, almost shattering the poor table. Robin gave a mysterious smile and said, "I've been traveling all these years and found a way to awaken the power of blood in an ancient elf tomb. However, only those who are completely loyal to me can this method work." Simon's intelligence came up at this moment. As soon as he heard the Baron's words, he immediately took 2 steps back and plopped down on one knee, saying, "Of course I am completely loyal to the leader. From now on, the leader will let me go east, I will not go west, let me stand, I will not stand down." Robin thought to himself what kind of ghost metaphor this is. He certainly believes in Simon's loyalty, because the system won't lie. Since Simon and other Highlanders have already appeared in the system, it indicates that they are absolutely loyal to Robin. "I believe in your loyalty, so let me awaken the hidden bloodline power within you." Robin stood up, walked around the desk, and approached Simon. Even if Simon knelt down on one knee, his head was almost pressing against Robin's chest. Robin placed one hand on top of Simon's head, and the other hand reached into the air. He closed his eyes and began to pretend to cast spells, whispering a spell in his mouth. "The front wheels don't rotate, the back wheels rotate." Simon couldn't hear what Robin was saying, only feeling an unprecedented nervous tension, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. As the Lord cast his spell, he seemed to truly feel a mysterious force enveloping him. The air in the study seemed to freeze, and his body became stiff. Robin pretended to be mischievous while opening the system panel in his mind, entering the hero page, clicking on Simon's name, "Do you want to awaken your bloodline?" and selecting yes. Bloodline awakening successful, hero Simon's bloodline level has been upgraded to level 1. Simeon Tun suddenly felt a force appearing within him, which came too suddenly and suddenly emerged, clearly not inherent to him. Robin, like a prodigy, took a long breath and slowly opened his eyes, saying, "All right, I have awakened your bloodline power." Simon slowly stood up, looking down at his 2 big hands, his rough face full of shock. A qualified warrior always knows his body like the palm of his hand. He can clearly feel that he has become stronger than before, not just a little bit stronger, but an order of magnitude stronger. Now he can beat his original self to the ground with just one hand. He tried to punch the air in front of him several times, although he didn't hit anything. His strength and punching speed were completely different from his original self, and there was a fundamental difference. As Simon adapted to his new body, Robin also checked Simon's various data in the system. Bloodline level 1 did not bring new abilities to Simon, which disappointed Robin a bit. However, Simon's original indicators, strength, speed, adaptability, perception, have all been greatly improved, especially with the most power points added. After all, the giants are known for their strength. You have awakened the Iron Giant bloodline now, and from now on, you will be an Awakener. However, I must remind you that since I can awaken your bloodline power, I can also seal it. Only by being absolutely loyal to me can you continue to be an Awakener. Robin's words are not to scare Simon, only those who are loyal to him will appear on the system. If loyalty is lost, it will naturally be expelled from the system, and the awakened bloodline power will also be reclaimed by the system. This can be considered as an additional advantage that the system has gifted to Robin, so he doesn't have to worry about traitors. Becoming the awakener of his dreams, Simon was so happy that he went crazy. Now even if Robin drove him away, he would stubbornly follow Robin. He knelt down on one knee again and shouted loudly, "Simon, I will follow the leader for generations until death." Robin nodded satisfied and said, "Great, you go back and tell your brothers that as long as you are loyal to me, I can also give them bloodline strength." "Yes, leader." Simon left happily, like a wild horse without reins, eager to try the new strength he had gained. The next day, Robin heard from the old butler that Simon had gone crazy last night, fighting everywhere and knocking down over a dozen fellow villagers in just one meal. Robin, who was angry, called Simon over and beat him up hard again. Giving you new strength doesn't make you beat people everywhere. However, thanks to Simon's fist promotion, the villagers soon knew that Robin could awaken his bloodline power. A group of Highlanders immediately imitated Simon and competed to show loyalty to Robin. Robin then held a awakening ceremony. On the open space in front of the Lord's mansion, dozens of Highland barbarians knelt neatly in front of Robin, shouting in unison, "We are willing to pledge our loyalty to the Lord to the death." Robin, just like that day, pretended to recite a spell. The sheep under the poplar tree should pee, not let the sheep pee, and then awaken their bloodline power in the system. In this way, Robin's initial plan was to form an Iron Giant Guard. Based on the various attributes displayed by the system, the most suitable development route for these Highland Iron Guards is heavy infantry. This is also similar to their ancestors. After all, in ancient times, the Iron Giant's body height of 5 or 6 meters could not organize cavalry, and only the ancient dragon could barely serve as their mount. However, although people now have it, the equipment of the guards is not yet available. Not to mention equipment, these Highlanders are so poor that they don't even have a decent piece of clothing. Usually, they go hunting with sharpened wooden sticks. The wilderness is full of dangers, and not only are the indigenous people eyeing the human pioneers, but also because they are far away from the empire, there are often attacks among the noble pioneers. In the past year or so, the city of Nuteo has been safe and sound, and it can only be said that the luck of the Highlanders is really good. Of course, it is also possible that they are too poor. But the state of running in this territory is bound to be short-lived. Robin needs weapons and armor to form a true armed force. Over the years, Robin has also accumulated some wealth while wandering outside. A bag full of coins is his lifeline. So he called Simon, ordered 10 iron guards, formed a procurement team, and decided to go to the nearest city in the wilderness to purchase a batch of weapons and equipment, completely arming the Highland barbarians. I have always been dissatisfied with the title of the book. If anyone is interested, could you help me think of a new title? Thank you, pen refill. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Not being in charge of one's own household and not knowing the high cost of firewood and rice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Not being in charge of one's own household and not knowing the high cost of firewood and rice. Yinchuan City is the closest big city to Kaifeng territory and also the last border of imperial civilization. Beyond Yinchuan City, to the north is the boundary of the wilderness. Robin rode on a horse, walking on a straight and long dirt road. He was wearing leather armor, riding boots, hanging a long sword from his waist, and had a heroic and majestic appearance. Behind him followed a four-wheeled carriage, which was another piece of property left by his uncle. The driver is Simon, and the other 10 high subway guards are crowded in the car. The 2 slow horses exerted their strength to suckle in order to pull these 10 strong men. Pedestrians on the main road continue to flow, including those riding horses, driving cars, and walking. They come from all over the country in different clothing and facial expressions, mostly from merchants who come to Yinchuan City to do business. Although the wilderness is barbaric and backward, some of its specialties have earned merchants a lot of money, especially fur, which is most popular among aristocratic ladies. Although there was no one to direct, all the pedestrians on the road spontaneously walked to the right. Looking down from the sky, the flow of people was like 2 flowing rivers, one going to Silver Frost City and the other leaving Silver Frost City. Looking ahead along the road, the tall walls of Silver Frost City gradually grew out on the distant horizon. Anxious Robin grabbed his horse belly and shouted to Simon behind him, "Accelerate, we're almost there." After 15 minutes, they finally arrived at the gate of Silver Frost City. Standing under the towering walls of Yinchuan City, everyone can't help but feel a sense of insignificance. The giant city wall, which is over 10 meters high, is entirely built by giant stones. Years of wind and rain have made this northern city look solemn and full of historical significance. Under the city gate, the people who left the city and those who entered the city lined up in 2 lines. 20 or so armored guards were collecting city taxes. When it was Robin's turn, he proudly took out the noble medal from his pocket. Lousy is a nobleman. He felt secretly satisfied. What does a privileged class mean? After exempting the entry tax, Robin led his team into the city under the envious gaze of others. For these Highland barbarians who have never seen the world before, Silver Frost City is simply another world. The spacious and straight slate avenue is filled with countless pedestrians, various shops, and a dazzling array of goods in the shops, all of which dazzle the Iron Guard. This place seems like a paradise on earth, completely different from a wasteland with only weeds and beasts. Robin heard two barbarians whispering behind him, "Hey, the women in the city are really white." However, Lord has no intention of wandering around. He had lived in the Silver Frost City for a few days before, and after a slight sense of direction, he led his team towards the west of the city. There is a military street in the west of the city, which is full of weapons and armor shops, as well as blacksmiths, leather shops, and even magic prop shops selling magic scrolls. Anything related to war can be sold here. The pedestrians on the street all looked difficult to deal with, including knights in armor, tall and sturdy fighters, archers, adventurers, and even occasionally one or two mages wearing magic robes. Robin first randomly selected a weapons store, tied his horse to the door, and led his little brothers into it. Entering is a lobby, with 2 rows of wooden shelves on each side. The left shelf is for weapons and the right shelf is for armor. The walls of the lobby are also covered with weapons and armor. A group of Highland meat mountains walked into the shop and immediately crowded the originally spacious lobby. Highlanders inherently advocate violence, and the attraction of weapons to them is like that of jewelry to beautiful women. As soon as they entered the store, their eyes immediately became straight. These rustic hats had never seen so many exquisite and beautiful weapons arranged together before. Is this the legendary Utopia? The shop owner is a middle-aged man with a thin face. He was originally dozing off behind the counter, but when he saw a customer, he immediately changed into a standard business smile and walked out from behind the counter. "Sir, may I ask what you want to buy?" Robin looked at the shelf and casually picked up a long sword, weighed it in his hand, and then lightly flicked it with his fingers on the blade, making a crisp and pleasant hum. "Well, it's a good sword. How much is this?" Robin's tone sounded rich and powerful. "Oh my God, you really have an eye for it, sir. This sword is produced by the famous Les Forging Workshop and uses high-quality Southern Ussery steel. Now our store has a promotional offer, and you can take it away for only 30 gold coins." 30 gold. Robin was so scared that he almost threw his sword out. He pretended to be calm with a faint smile, then put his sword back in the distance and said disdainfully, "Just an ordinary person." The silly Simon behind him didn't even know that his lord was pretending. He leaned forward to look at the sword and said in a daze, "Leader, this sword is not bad. Let's buy it." Robin really wished he could devour this muscle and brain on the spot. 30 gold, you can buy it if you want. Selling you is not enough for 30 gold. But he pretended to be forced, even if he had to grit his head, he gritted his back teeth and said, "It's just average quality, I don't like it." "Leader, your vision is too high. This sword is really good." "Shut up. Subordinates cannot refute their superiors, boss, you can't buy it for me, I don't mind." Simon cracked his big mouth and showed a simple and honest smile, like an old farmer in the field. Robin suddenly realized, my goodness, that he was waiting for me here, and finally he came to his senses. He was so angry that he jumped up and slapped Simon on the back of the head, saying, "By your head, get out and see the horses." "Oh," Simon rubbed the back of his head, feeling aggrieved like a child weighing over 300 pounds, and walked out pitifully. With Simon's warning, the other Highland barbarians quickly put the weapons they were playing with back on the weapon rack. Robin continued to ask the store owner for prices, traveling from the high price area to the low price area, and then from the low price area to the clearance sale area. The sweetness of the business smile on the boss's face also plummeted. "I thought it was a big fish, but it turned out to be a small shrimp. Finally, I asked about the cheapest weapon in the store, a very ordinary standard long gun. The gun head is made of precision steel, and the gun body is made of the wood core of the iron flower tree, balancing hardness and toughness. Overall, this is a weapon that is mediocre but still sufficient, and many noble armies in the kingdom will issue long spears to the big-headed soldiers. The gun is only 2 meters long, which is enough for ordinary imperial soldiers to use, but for Highlanders with an average height of 2 meters facing upwards, it seems a bit small and exquisite. When Robin asked about the price, a regular standard long gun cost 50 silver. He calculated the gold coins in his pocket and found that the money for buying 50.1 long guns was enough, but the money for buying armor was not enough. Alas, a penny can't defeat a hero. At this moment, the smile on the boss's face had completely disappeared. "This customer, are you buying or not?" Robin smiled calmly and walked away, saying, "The quality of your weapons is too average. I'll go see another one." Boss. After Robin led a group of iron guards away, the boss spat at the door in disgust and said, "Pooh. Poor devil. I've seen it all here, please click on a bookmark." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Red Headband. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Red Headband. No matter what era, weapons and armor are safe gold-swallowing beasts, and there is no profession that spends more money like flowing water than fighting. Robin strolled through more than a dozen weapon stores and walked from the street to the end, only to find that the first one still had the cheapest weapons. He couldn't help but feel sad in his heart and said, "Is my great ambition about to die young because of poverty before it even begins?" Walking out of the last weapons store with a gloomy expression, Robin was worried about what to do when a person suddenly stood in front of him. That is a young girl of 17 or 18 years old, who is quite clever and beautiful, with slight freckles on her cheeks, short chestnut hair, and a red headscarf tied around her head. He was dressed in a short and efficient outfit, with leather armor on his upper body, horse pants on his lower body, and a short knife hanging from his waist. "Master, you want to buy some handy weapons, but you're not very wealthy, are you?" The girl wore a sunny smile on her face, like a blooming sunflower, born with a hint of closeness, making it difficult to doubt her. But Robin is not the first one to come out and hang out. He won't let his guard down just because the other person is young. Killing and profiteering are not at an advanced age these days. Vigilantly looking up and down at the young girl, he opened his bloodline eyes and confirmed that the other party was not an awakened one. Robin had a deep understanding in his heart that if he was not an awakened one, there was nothing to be afraid of. Even if he had malicious intentions, he could not defeat us rough men. At the moment of the bloodline, the awakened one's blood mist will condense on the chest, like a pulsating core that can be distinguished at a glance. However, although this girl is not an awakener, she is also a carrier of blood. Robin was slightly surprised. The girl's body was surrounded by mist of red and blue bloodlines, which was very rare. The girl actually possessed the bloodline of a swordsman. However, her blood concentration is very low, and without external stimulation, she would never have become an awakener in her lifetime. "Who are you?" Robin asked. "My name is Jenna and I am a merchant. I have good weapons at a good price. I wonder if the master is interested." The red headscarf laughed innocently. "You've been following us for a long time, haven't you?" Robin frowned slightly. I was strolling on the street and saw that the master had walked in and out of more than a dozen weapon stores, but still had nothing left. "So, it's not that you didn't find the weapons in these stores, it's just that you're short of money. Looking at the few people behind the master, I fully understand that the master is a pioneer lord, right?" Ghana's analysis was very convincing, and Robin couldn't help but laugh. This little girl is quite clever. Indeed, their group of people, led by an imperial man and several Highlanders, such a prominent combination is difficult not to attract the attention of others. Simon and the others were all naked and didn't even have a shirt, almost putting the word poor directly on their faces. That's right, sir. I am indeed a pioneer lord and I am thinking of purchasing weapons for my group of guards. There is nothing to hide, so Robin simply said. He saw that the little red headscarf was not a threat, so he decided to go with her to take a look. Moreover, this is Silver Frost City. Just now, there was a patrol guard walking over from the street corner. You said there are cheap weapons, okay, lead the way ahead. Sir, this way, please. My warehouse is not on this street. Gunna felt a sense of joy in her heart. She was lucky enough to catch another fat sheep. This nobleman looks foolish, and the Highlanders are also a well-known group of fools. Who will you slaughter if you don't slaughter him? The red headscarf led the way, left Wubei Street, walked 2 blocks, and arrived at a relatively deserted street, then stopped in front of a small courtyard. The wooden gate of the small courtyard is tightly closed, and the stone walls surround the inside tightly. Standing outside, one cannot see the situation inside the courtyard. This is my warehouse, sir. Please come inside, said Red Scarf as she pushed open the courtyard door and walked in, with Robin following behind her. This small courtyard is not very large, about the size of 2 basketball courts, but it is filled with various goods. Robin saw at a glance the weapons and armor he wanted, including swords, knives, axes, spears, armor. All piled up in a messy corner of the courtyard. Compared to the neatly arranged weapons store, this place was like a big street vendor. Behind the yard, there seems to be a warehouse, and at this moment, several shirtless young men are moving things. Bags of burlap are being transported out of the warehouse and piled up in the yard, seemingly containing wheat flour. To Robin's surprise, the little girl with a red headscarf seemed to be the leader of this caravan. Seeing her return, several young people immediately stopped their work and ran over to greet her warmly, calling her Captain. What are you doing around here? Let's all go back to work. I still have guests here. The red headscarf forcefully drove these people away, turned around to face Robin, and immediately changed into another face, smiling quite brightly. Sir, this way, please. The red headscarf took Robin to the corner of the yard, where weapons were piled up. He picked up a long sword and brushed it out, saying, Master, look, these are all top-notch weapons. I'm twice as cheap here as outside. If you like this sword, you can take it for 20 silver. Robin casually took a sword and looked at it. At a glance, he could see that although these weapons were well maintained, the usage marks on them were still very obvious. These were second-hand weapons, and they had experienced combat. No wonder they were sold much cheaper than outside. Some armor has even been damaged and later repaired. The skill of repairing is mediocre, and it only deceives inexperienced people. Lord, you have looked at several more weapons, all of which are second-hand goods without exception, and most of these weapons have the same shape, which appears to be consumables produced in large quantities. Mass production, second-hand, and experienced combat. Robin probably guessed it. Are these weapons all taken from dead people? Only the nobles have the ability to produce standard weapons in large quantities to arm the army. These weapons have obvious traces of combat and must have experienced large-scale wars. The red headscarf was enthusiastically promoting to Robin when suddenly asked, and he was stunned. She met many exploration lords in Silver Frost City, most of whom were gamblers who had no real skills and started dreaming of lords after saving some money. Most of these people will lose everything on the wasteland, and being able to save their lives and come back is already fortunate. They can easily deceive them with second-hand weapons. And those truly influential and powerful development lords have close relationships with great nobles and business groups, and it is impossible for them to go to the armed street to buy weapons. They have already prepared everything privately. The red headscarf saw that Robin didn't have much money and was leading a group of Highlanders. This strange combination was almost engraved with the words, layman, on his forehead. I thought he was also one of those pioneering lords who had made great fortune, but this time the mare stumbled and encountered an expert. However, her mind turned quickly and she immediately explained calmly, "Sir, although these weapons are second-hand goods, they are all sourced through legitimate channels." Robin laughed when he heard it. "I believe you're a ghost, trying to fool me." "Dream it, you." In recent years, the imperial royal family has declined, and there have been occasional expeditions among the nobles within the kingdom. The scale of the war has increased, and more people have died, consuming more and more weapons and armor. As a result, some have started to launch the Dead Man Wealth campaign. It is obvious that as long as you can tolerate the stench of corpses, crowds of crows and mice, as well as invisible bacteria and epidemics, making money from the dead is definitely a profitable job. After all, the dead will not bargain with you. Although the imperial government had explicit regulations prohibiting civilian groups from collecting weapons from the dead on the battlefield, being caught was a serious crime. But if people die for wealth, there will be a market where there is demand. However, Robin was too lazy to bother about where these weapons came from, as long as they could be used cheaply. So he just smiled and didn't break the lie of the red headscarf for the time being, starting to pick up weapons and armor. Kana saw that Robin did not continue to inquire, and her heart, which was hanging, let go. She breathed a sigh of relief in secret. Robin saw the relaxed look on the red headscarf from the corner of his eye, and he thought to himself, "You're too happy too early." After a while, Robin selected a militia 3-piece set for his iron guard, each with a standard spear, a standard waist knife, and a standard leather armor. These leather armor are all the size of the Empire, and the Highlanders wear tight and even a bit ridiculous, but they are much stronger than their previous sprint state. On the battlefield, having armor and not having armor are simply two different creatures. Even the rough and fleshy Highlanders are left with no temper at all by the armored Imperial army. Now is the bargaining session. Robin noticed that the red headscarf was second-hand, so he didn't dare to ask for too high a price and said, 60 gold. This price can be said to be quite favorable. Usually, Gunna charges at least twice the price. Although these are second-hand weapons and armor, they can still be used, and the quality of military standard weapons is generally good. Following the glorious tradition of having prices, Robin opened his mouth and said, 30 gold. End of this chapter.